Hey guys, I thought I'd do a tutorial based on a request from user VR, basically asking how to have more than four MIDI stands and how to layer drums. Now, I can show you the way I do it using Trigger 2, which is basically a plugin which I highly recommend. It's worth investing for layering different drums. So what I'm doing, my setup basically consists of Superior Drummer 3, which I'm using for the shells. Sorry, for the cymbals. So I'm using Superior Drummer for the cymbals and the cowbell, and I've disabled all the actual shells. Now the shells I'm using Trigger 2 to activate. So whenever C1 happens, which is a kick, I'm activating Skrillex's kick and then the kick room. If I bring the volume up, that's that there. If I go to the snare, it's activating Skrillex's snare, the room, and another sample from Tom Rodriguez, who's another producer. So you can also adjust the levels, which is, I can do another tutorial on this if you want, but you can also change the ADSR, the tuning, so you can tune the drums, or high pitch snare based on what you want. You can pan it. There's a lot of things to do inside Trigger. Once you set it up, the setting up is probably the hardest part. Once you've set it up, you'll have a good system going, and the rest will just be plugging in the MIDI. So what I do, what to do to make this work? This basically, I'll write this C1. The kick is C1. The snare is D1. So if you open up the MIDI, you take this pane and turn it to the right or adjust it there, and you'll see that here you have different outputs. This means that if it's just got a track, it means it's by default going to be through Superior Drummer. Or if it's already got Superior Drummer selected, means it'll go through Superior Drummer MIDI. So for example, if I play this, so that hi-hat, for example, is through Superior Drummer. But if I play the kick, it's going through to you can actually select each individual note and select it to a different output, which is pretty powerful in Cubase. So this means that I'm sending this to trigger kick C2. And this snare, I'm going to snare TC-D1, which is these audio tracks. So this signal is going through to here, and then inside Trigger, you basically go to Settings, MIDI in, so you check MIDI in, and you select C1 or whatever note you wanted to activate. Which means every time once a MIDI hits this, it instantaneously hits these two triggers at the same time. You can add more. You can add, I don't know, we're in kick, so kick Simone. So you can, and then go back to here and adjust the slider. So it's activating these three every time C1 hits. So you can layer up to 8. So the toms, I've done the same thing. I've inside the toms, there's a trigger which activates a sample, and then it's going to a tom group. Now the overhead in the room, if I mute these, these channels are created from these two outputs that I've created from this VSD. You can create more if you want. You can select these, but for me, it's not necessary. I only need the overhead and the room because I'm only using Superior Drummer for these cymbals. So just to recap, you go in here, usually the slider's around here, you pull it all the way to the right, and then in each individual note you can ask this to go to tom 2 instead, or you can send this to tom 3 instead. You know, you could even put that as the kick. So that's the powerful thing with this MIDI. You can set each individual note to a different output. Now, one of the questions was, what if you want to layer it with something else? So let's say, for example, you want to layer it with something inside Contact or another VST. What you can do is add an audio track. I'll add in a stereo track. Actually, let's go with what I said earlier. So just a Contact. We'll send it to the drum group or drum bus track. Now, if I go to, let's say, a snare 2, browse for folder, impact, drums, which is one of Buster's kits. Oops, sorry. You can adjust the level. I'll just quickly put a limiter on it so I can trim the output. Okay, so let's say you want to layer that, which is on D1. This is already set to it, so this, oh, sorry, I already had it before I made the YouTube video. So if I don't do a MIDI send, nothing will get to this Contact. If I click here on the MIDI channel and activate a MIDI send and send it to Contact, you'll see that it's activating this Contact snare. Now let's say I want to layer another snare on it. Okay, cool. Let's add in another Contact. And let's put in, I don't know, a snare 6. Browse for folder. Okay. Then you go back into the main MIDI channel. You use up your second MIDI send and you send it to Contact 7. Let me just rename this snare. I'll just say snare again. You go back to here, snare again. Whoops. Bring out the, turn that way down. Even put whatever plugin you want. If you want a saturator or another limiter. So if you mute the overheads, it's activating this trigger and also these two snares. Now let's say you want to lay the kick. Okay, cool. Let's add in another Contact. We'll call it kick Contact 1. Go into the drums bus and let's go to, actually this time let's, I don't know, go to a a drums Fairview kit, for example. Now, this would be just a bit more involving because you got to now unload everything else but the kick because you're sending the whole MIDI output to it. So it'll play the whole kit. You could do that if you wanted to, if you want to layer drums. I just find you might get a bit of phasing if you do that. So in this tutorial, I'm just going to unload everything. There are people out there that do like to layer drums, but I prefer to do my layering inside Trigger. So anyway, let's go. What was this one? This was that. So this is kick. Let's say kick Fairview. Now you go into here. You go to the third MIDI send, and you send it to kick Fairview. Now Fairview, the thing with Fairview is it's on C0, the kick. So you might have to go, there's a bit of tweaking involved with different MIDI maps. So you might want to go use a Toontrack Superior one. So now it's activating it. I don't know why the snare's on there. Alright, there we go. So we're activating the kick here. You can add another MIDI send. But yeah, that's how I would go about layering drums. And how I've got routed is that these over everything goes to a drums bus, which I put a UAD oxide in and crank it up, and then yeah, this is my kind of like default template. Later on I can get involved in mixing, but this is a good starting off point just to get your arrangement right when you're tracking the song. If you run out of sends, you can't. I was looking into this daisy chaining sends, but it's not really doable. Like you would have to copy and paste this. Like say you want to add another, let's say you've ran out of sends, you can actually, I don't know, create another contact and then add in a, let's say, get good drums invasion kit. Just loading. And then you could, I'll just write invasion. And then you could, at the end when you're in the mix down phase, if you really want to layer more, you can copy paste that here. Oops. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend blending, like layering too much kicks because the low end starts to muddy up. But I guess snares you can kind of get away with. Toms, I try not to layer. I try not to layer toms. You can get a bit of phasing going on. Cymbals and all that is fine. Anything on the high end, you can layer as much as you want. But yeah, I just generally find on the low end, it becomes harder to mix if you layer too much bass frequencies. You'll also find this gap here, like the MIDI, it starts here. If you want to reduce this gap, you just go back to your MIDI on this one, and you just close this pane, and it'll be back to the default view. What else do you guys need to know? Yeah, give us a shout if you need any more in-depth explanations. This is just the way I like to work. This allows you to, if you have trigger 2, you can pretty much stack as much as you want in multiples of 8. So I barely even use past, like I barely even use, maybe I might use a 4th one. I wouldn't go past, I wouldn't go past the 4th one here. But yeah, it's you can open a lot of new doors using it this way, using trigger 2. There's a lot of possibilities you can do in the ADSR section, so you can play around with this sustain and release, and like attack, the hold values. You can, like I said earlier, you can pan and tune things, phase invert. So yeah, and I usually send this to a snare sum, which then goes to the drums bus, just for a bit of gain staging if I want to add plugins later on. So yeah, guys, give me a shout if you need any more help. This is Superior Drummer 3 with Trigger 2 layering on the shells in Cubase 13. Cheers, guys.